Hi folks, Matt DeRizio, author of Finnish Mosin-Nagant 3-line rifle to Ukko-Pekka, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be taking a look at a 1918 dated Sestroretsk Mosin-Nagant that was captured by Finland, of course, hence it being on the channel here. And I'm going to be doing a little bit of an anatomy deep dive on all the parts, where they came from, my thoughts on that. So I'm going to be doing a whole new series of these videos. Please let me know what you think in the comments below, and without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so we're sitting here in my backyard, and right now I'm going to be taking a look at this 1918 Sestroretsk that also happens to be Finnish-Puolustuslaitos marked. And starting right there with the barrel, we can see very clearly 1918. Serial number 124244. The serial range for 1918 is actually a continuation of the serial number range from 1917 Sestroretsk production, and it runs from about 120K to about 126K. It's interesting. I think the receiver is likely original. It is a Sestroretsk receiver, and coming over here, if we flip the receiver over, we can see that it is 1917 dated. And 1917 is plausible for a 1918. It could have been leftover stuff that they then assembled in 1918. However, nothing else on this seems to be original to the barreled action. It would have had a comprehensive overhaul with the fins in 1942 whenever they stamped that marking on it. So probably a very, very low chance any of the other Sestroretsk marked parts, if they're out here, are original to the rifle. Now, when we look at the magazine, the HV jam-free modifications present, judging by the fact that there is no actual HV marking on either side of the magazine. This was probably intended for an M39 and used as a replacement part. The ones that were used on the M2830 will have the actual HV somewhere on the magazine. Typically, we put the magazine up, we take a look at the maker's mark. Okay, we're dealing with an Azevsk. This Azevsk is the 1928 and earlier marking there. You can see the arrow with the bow. And if we take a look at the floor plate, and what's our serial number here? 131354. Not a match. Didn't expect it to be a match. Coming over to our components of the trigger, this is interesting. So right here, if we take a look, this Tula marking was used after 1928 at Tula. So we know this is probably a replacement part that was actually captured by Finland in the Winter War, the Continuation War, because this could not have existed in Finnish service prior to that time. There's no way they could have got their hands on it. Look at Sear, we got a mark right here. All right, that's a Azevsk. That's their 1928 and earlier marking right there. We see the arrow with the bow once again. And if we come over to our bolt, let's take a look at our bolt components. So here's the one that befuddled me for a while. While the bolt matches and it is Sestroretsk marked, I do not believe it to be original to the rifle. And why do I say that? If I come over here and you look at the serial number on the barrel, you'll see that Sestroretsk had a serifed font. So what I mean by that is there's little portions on each numeric representation, and there's a flat part, or it kind of tilts upward a little bit. You don't see it at all on this bolt. So the fins likely just used a Sestroretsk bolt, and they stamped it matching, but even though it's matching, I don't believe it to be completely original matching, if that makes sense. Coming over to our other bolt parts, and over here we've got the bolt connector, the firing pin spring, and the bolt head with extractor. So if we look at the bolt head, we're going to see that this is actually a Chatellerault bolt head. You can tell it's got one of their subcontractor marks right there, as well as the Chatellerault symbol there. And right here on the extractor, it's a Tula marking, post-1928 Tula. On the bolt connector, I was able to find it. It took a while, but this little shield right there, another Chatellerault subcontractor marking. Our firing pin spring, no markings on these. Firing pin, almost always no markings on these. So we've got in our bolt a Sestroretsk bolt body. We never looked at the cocking knob. Cocking knob is a Sestroretsk right there. We can see the arrow. So Sestroretsk, Shatellero with a Tula extractor on there. And then of course, mystery parts, no way to know where those came from. So of the 5 parts with makers, 2 Tula, 2 Shatellero, or 1 Tula, 2 Shatellero, 2 Sestroretsk. Coming up to our stock. So this is a Finnish stock. It's a Finnish-made 2-piece wartime stock. It has what I like to call the plated hangers. The escutcheons right here will have a plate that goes through them, and then you will fit one of these hangers through that. It allows you to use slings, and there's no dog collars required. It's much more durable. We'll take a look at our barrel bands. This barrel band right here, that is a Tula. That is a pre-1928 Tula marking right there with the hammer. And coming over here to our other barrel band, the front band, really no way to know on that one. A lot of times they're pretty beat up. Coming down the stock, a characteristic of Finnish stocks is that your recoil lug is always going to be centered in the groove. Russian stocks, it's off-centered a lot of the times. And we should have some kind of maker's mark on the butt. Looking at the butt right there. Yep, hard to see, but yep, that's going to be a Finnish Arsenal-made stock. It looks like a 4, so we've got AV4 or Asevriko Nelia. So pretty cool right there. Handguard's intact. What I thought was neat about this handguard is the ding on the handguard perfectly matches the ding on the stock. So I know the 2 of these have been together for a while, and whether that was combat or training, it took a pretty nasty gouge through the both of them right there. So I love little bits of history and markings on a stock like that. I think it gives it character. I'd rather have a really beat up stock than having a brand new one. It just, I don't know, I like the used appearance of it. So what haven't we covered yet? We covered the barrel action. Oh yeah, importer. So let's come down here. M91 importer is usually going to be up towards the muzzle. Hard to see, but right here we've got M91 Russian 762 by 54R, and then we've got Century Arms International, St. Albans, Vermont. Now, this would have been imported in the early 1990s. Century Arms International brought these in for the princely sum of about $12.06 per rifle, and it would have been imported pre-95 because Century Arms moved to Florida in 1995. The front sight blade, Finnish replacement. I call that the Finnish notched blade. It's a little bit taller than the original Russian front sight. Looking at our muzzle, pretty open right there. Definitely been counterbored. I think when I measured it earlier, it was counterbored about 2 inches. And coming over to our rear sight right here, the Arshin has been replaced by the metric system that the Finns used. We can also see the D marking for the D166 round. Coming up top, we've got a KA3 and then a Zevisk arrow. So this rear sight was likely on a Dragoon originally. And then, oh, well, that's interesting. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. This rear sight would have been a Austrian modification right there. That's Austrian Schritt, and that would have been the measurement the Austro-Hungarians used when they captured the rear sight. Well, not the rifle. The rear sight and the rifle lived separate lives and were probably put together once it got to Finland, because there's no way that a 1918 dated Sestroretsk would have ever been captured by Austria-Hungary. Zooming in the barrel, we'll take a nice look here. So by 1918, Sestroretsk machinery was pretty tapped out. They only made a few thousand rifles, like I mentioned earlier, in 1918. So either the Sestroretsk writing, which is usually really beautiful up top, has been worn away over time, or it wasn't stamped all that deeply to begin with. We can see the roll stamping of the Puolustuslaitos, so Puolustuslaitos. Very nice. And down here, of course, for good measure, we've got another stamping. Soilmen Armea, that would have been the Finnish Army stamp. It would have been a little bit redundant with the Puolustuslaitos, but they seem to have put it on there anyways. Right here, 124, 244, that would not be original to the rifle when these rifles were imported, because the receiver constitutes the weapon they would have needed to put that on their importation. This is pre-dot matrix, so Century Arms would have applied that marking on the receiver right there. That would not be original to it. And then hunting for any other markings we have here. Nope, we've just got our typical Russian markings, inspector markings, provisional black powder proof, nothing too crazy. So all in all, a really neat piece, really, really rare year of production. 1918 is incredibly uncommon to see. As I said, the Russian Revolution was in full swing, so not a whole lot of them were made at that point in time. Even more rare that this one would have not only ended up in Finland, but then been there during the short period in 1942 when it would have been Puolustuslaitos marked. In my opinion, this rifle was likely put together in its present configuration at that time. Taking this thing apart, it was awfully gunky and nasty. As you can see, it's still not fully cleaned up as much as I would like it to be. And the wood screws, everything else, everything had been in there for a very, very long time. So either that or some kind of post-war finish overhaul. No one had taken this apart in the States for probably its whole time since it was imported. Anyways, I hope you all liked the video. If you like this format, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to be taking apart more of the Mosin-Nagants in my collection and showing off some of the features on them. So I will see everybody again in another video.